Welcome back to All Good Points. This week we've got some all new faces. My name's Katja Kowalski.
My name's Lily Temperton.
I'm the Stakeholder Engagement Officer at VoltFast.
And I'm a consultant at Hanway Associates.
This week we're doing things a little differently. We've got a bit of a female takeover this week, don't we, Lily?
Woo! Good, exciting times ahead.
Yeah, I guess let's just get straight into it. In the kind of Valentine's Day theme, topical balms or cannabis topical balms have been surging on Valentine's Day. So infused products and topical balms have seen a surge in sales around the romantic holiday, and these topical segments have received the highest relative growth compared to the previous 4 weeks. So massage oils have been up by 111%, bath salts and scrubs up by 34%, and transdermal products up by 32%. So yeah, not massive news, but I guess it's another example of how cannabis is becoming this mainstream product that's tailored for different occasions. What are your thoughts on this, Lily?
Yeah, I think a lot of people will have had some quite fun Valentine's Day by the sound of it. I think it's a really exciting category because I think topicals are a really good way to get new consumers in, particularly if they've never tried any cannabis product before. And yeah, as you said, a holiday is the perfect time to introduce a new consumer to cannabis as a whole, and to hopefully ease them into other product formats and all. Yeah, it was quite funny because there was a viral sort of TikTok trend as well about a few months ago, which was for like a CBD bath bomb. And that went like completely viral, and yeah, they've seen like huge record sales. I think they were sold out within a few days. So I think we're seeing quite a lot of like craze for topicals at the minute, and it's kind of becoming like a bit of a meme at the minute. So yeah,
yeah, getting on the trend. Yeah, I think it's just quite a cool way to like see how cannabis is much more than just like a product that you could like vape or smoke. Like I really didn't think that like Valentine's Day would be a time that cannabis sales surge, but I guess it's kind of just in line with the whole intoxicating psychoactive substances and how that's got kind of like an aphrodisiac effect. So you've got, sales of like red wine during the holidays, red wine during Valentine's Day. So cannabis is kind of jumping on that bandwagon, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the perfect thing, really. I think if we can shoehorn cannabis into as many use cases and encourage people that it can be used for so many different needs and times of year, times of day, whatever, I think it's great. I think it's only going to increase demand and more consumers being able to benefit from cannabis as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, I love the kind of cannabis peeping into all these mainstream holidays. Like I know there was like Green Wednesday back in November for kind of like a knockoff of Black Friday for people getting each other cannabis Christmas presents, and we've got the same for Valentine's. It's gonna be like we need to think of like an Easter spin-off as well, like cannabis Easter bunnies or something.
Yeah, infused bunnies. That would be great. On to the next story then. There's been the largest study to commence examining the toxicological impact of trace levels of THC. So this was a study by the European Industrial Hemp Association, focused on humans ingesting trace levels of THC in food. They've spent over 1.6 million euros on the trial. There's going to be 200 participants. And the aim of the trial being to help establish an evidence base for regulators to adjust the permitted THC levels in food. So obviously this is going to be a huge thing for helping to prove that cannabis is safe in food. What do you think about this and the benefits the trial could bring?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is pretty big. I haven't really seen too much coverage on haven't seen it been covered too much on Twitter and stuff, but I think this is huge, especially around the whole kind of we need to gain back control over cannabis and CBD products. And obviously a big thing that's kind of been holding the industry back so far is the fact that obviously CBD is fine, but regulators are worried about THC. And I mean, for good reason. You don't want to have THC in products that could potentially be causing harm to certain
Yeah.
consumers. So I think this is huge. Obviously, like the trial's only going to be commencing uh, shortly, so we don't actually know what the results will be. But I think this
Yeah.
is really important. And, just like I think in general, the cannabis industry keeps saying, we need more evidence, we need more evidence around this sort of stuff. So this is definitely a big step forward for that.
Mm.
I don't know what you think, Lily.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's quite interesting because until now there's been quite a lot of an emphasis on maybe isolate products because of this THC risk. I know there was a big hold up around the UK border and things for the permitted 1 milligram per container restrictions and things. And I think if there can be like evidence to prove that trace amounts of THC are safe, I think it could open up a more science-based policy for the whole plant extracts rather than. I know like the FMCG companies are going to prefer probably isolates for their ingredients if they're making like I don't know, like the Coca-Colas of the world, when they're including CBD, they're maybe not going to want to go for the whole plant. But I think for the industry as a whole, I think there's been quite a lot of barriers against the whole plant. We had the novel foods, and now we're having the THC limits. And I think if this could just clear the path, I think it's only going to be a good thing for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just gives people a bit more variety of what they can do for the products. Because I know isolates and like synthetic products, a lot of
Mm,
people have been saying how that's kind of the only way forward with the industries. That's the only way you can like prove and make sure that it's only
yeah.
only CBD in the product. But this gives a bit more leeway, and I think just will like legitimize the industry a little bit more. And I mean,
Mm,
it could potentially have a good impact on like recreational cannabis and adult use cannabis, seeing that small amounts of THC are safe, so that could kind of move forward with other kind of reform and other kind of
mm.
evidence based research.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess if we could move to a system more like the Switzerland where they have up to 1% THC in there, they can have like pre-rolls and things because of that. I think it could open up a huge new category on the recreational and the wellness side of things if that can be proven. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, really exciting. Obviously not like huge news yet as we don't know what the results are, but regardless, I think this will be a big kind of step for the industry. All right, so on to the next story. This is also kind of we've got lots of research surveys, research and kind of
Mm,
development stuff this week. We've got a new Canadian survey has found that 1 in 4 Canadian adults report using cannabis at least once within the last year. And this is compared to other peer countries. The average was at 9%, where 9% of peer countries reported the same amount of cannabis use. I guess these findings aren't necessarily surprising with the legal market, but I think
hmm
there's a couple of things to consider here. What are your thoughts on this, Lily?
mm. Yeah, I think firstly, I mean, there's quite a lot of evidence to show that when legal markets are introduced, that it doesn't just increase accessibility for existing consumers, but it does open cannabis as a whole up to a whole new group who either couldn't or wouldn't get it through like illicit channels. So I think the fact that usage has increased, I don't think it's a hugely surprising thing if you're having new groups of people and new types of consumer moving in who wouldn't have been able to access it before. Um, and I think also it could be potentially the COVID implications. Obviously, people at home, cannabis is kind of being seen as a more of a health thing at the minute. There's been quite a few things about cannabis preventing COVID, not making any huge claims, but that is going around. So these type of things could be on people's minds as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking about this study, and I don't know. I feel like this kind of research bugs me a little bit in the fact that it
Mm,
says like, oh yeah, 1 in 4 Canadian adults have used cannabis at least once in the last year. Like, I feel like that's not a really telling statistic. Like, if you were to do the
mm,
same research on alcohol, and you'd be like, oh, 3 out of 4 people, have consumed alcohol in the last year. I feel like that just doesn't
yeah.
really tell you anything about the patterns of use or like how many times they use it, whether it's problematic. So I don't know. I feel like this kind of research, I don't know whether it necessarily like stigmatizes and worsens the reputation for cannabis, but
Mm,
it definitely it just kind of treats and boxes off cannabis as its own thing, and it's like, oh, if you use it at least once in the last year, you're classified as this kind of user. When it just, in reality, I
Yeah.
feel like this stuff doesn't really tell us anything about whether use is problematic. Because if it's not,
Mm.
then I guess it doesn't tell us that much about it. So, but yeah, I completely agree with your point around COVID. Like, I feel like 2020 just wasn't a very representative year for any kind of data collection.
Yeah, not at
But
all.
yeah, and I guess just around the kind of people might be more willing to disclose their cannabis use in a legal market. So it's quite possible that use hasn't increased, but people are just more
Mm.
willing to be honest about the fact that they use the substance. So yeah, I feel like there's quite a lot of things to consider with this survey, and definitely that, like,
Mm.
whether it's representative, that's one thing, but it doesn't really tell us a whole load about cannabis users.
No, and I'm not sure either what's included in this. I mean, if you were to use like CBD topical at Valentines, like we've been speaking about, are you then one of these
Yeah,
people that are included, or what's factored in? It may not all even be THC use at all being recorded in this. So
yeah, that's a good
yeah, as you
point. Like,
say,
are
really
they
hard to make
counting?
any conclusions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was gonna
No
say, like, they
problem.
haven't said whether it's CBD or THC use, or like, are they smoking joints? Are
Mm.
they using topical balms? Are they using oils? Like, yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that's just like, we've got no idea what this data means and
Yeah.
how what kind of conclusions to make of it.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. Yeah, for sure. Kind of linking on, our next story is data from the European Commission. A survey has revealed that cannabis consumption rates across Europe, the prevalence in use varies wildly. There were 10 countries that had a prevalence of over 10% of the population. Ireland came out with the highest rates, 17% have used a cannabis product in the last year. Again, we don't know what's factored in necessarily. Greek respondents had only 1% using cannabis. Also quite worrying, individuals were 4 times more likely to report using cannabis with tobacco than alternative methods. Yeah, what do you think about this? What springs to mind?
Yeah, I feel like there's quite a lot to unpack here. I guess in many ways it's very similar to the last survey. Like, I'd say,
Mm,
what is cannabis use? Like, what is cannabis use? How, what does what does this mean? Like, have these people used cannabis just once within the last year? Have they used it
yeah,
multiple times in a week or a month? Like, it doesn't really give us an indication of whether their use is problematic, what kind of patterns of use they're having. I would say that the cannabis mixed with tobacco is a worrying thing, and I think
mm,
it kind of just goes to highlight that, obviously, with a regulated market across Europe for recreational use, this would be a massive way to reduce this. Is We're seeing alternative methods of consumption really booming in North America, and so with an illicit market, people don't really have many other options, and obviously, I mean, this is kind of unrelated, but I'd say, like, one thing that really bugs me about research, kind of longitudinal cohort data
mm,
on cannabis, is that they rarely ever differentiate between people that consume cannabis and people that consume cannabis with tobacco. Like, makes a massive difference, and I
yeah.
think a lot of studies don't account for it.
The tobacco consumption is the most worrying part of it, because even if people are combusting cannabis, it's not necessarily as harmful, and if they're not including tobacco in it. And I think in North America as a whole, it hasn't been quite so much of a thing of joints with tobacco. I mean, I know they have like backwards blunt wraps, but it's not quite as much where they would mix as so much as we have here. And I think there is quite a bit of knowledge and interest in like dry herb vaporizers particularly among like enthusiasts and cannabis fans, people that are knowledgeable about it. But I don't think that's really filtered into the general public much. I mean, most people that I speak to or that you hear about are still rolling and smoking with tobacco. So I think there's quite a bit of, yeah, as you say, and it comes with having an unregulated market, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those kind of things to highlight, with a regulated market being a massive means of harm reduction. And yeah, I just think all the innovations that are happening in North America are so exciting, and it's like
Hmm.
cannabis is so much more than just rolling joints and smoking them. There's so many other methods of consumption, and I think highlighting that to policymakers and people across Europe, I think that's what's going to get cannabis legalized. Like I think people viewing it as like just people smoking joints and like
Yeah.
hitting some bongs. That's not what's going to get it legalized. I think people thinking, oh, I can consume cannabis in a pint of beer. How exciting!
Mm.
Like I think that's
Yeah.
what's going to change the law. So and yeah, I guess just also the numbers are quite shocking. Like just under 1 in 10 adults in Europe, or over 30
Mm.
million people have consumed cannabis in the last year. Like that's a significant portion, and I feel like that obviously this data isn't super representative, but it highlights that there's quite a lot of support, I'd guess, for cannabis legalization if this many people are
Mm.
consuming it.
Yeah, that's exactly
Uh,
what I was going to say. It's showing that about 1 in 10 of the population in Europe is currently considered as a criminal. So, yeah, I think it's just really highlighting the need for reform, and hopefully these type of things will trickle up to the regulators. And yeah, and I think that
yeah,
that's quite important also between figuring out why these different countries have different rates of consumption. Part of that could be like national stigma levels, what type of wellness products and awareness are available. So I think all of this does kind of factor in and play into those different rates that you see quite stark differences
yeah.
between, say, Ireland with 17% and then Greece about 1%.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I know I read I think this is an article that came out earlier this year, maybe end of
Mm.
2020, around that there's a correlation between the level of stigma in the country around cannabis use um, and kind of and how strict laws are, which is quite interesting. It's like
That's really
it
interesting,
just
yeah.
like laws are just making things worse. So I think that kind
Yeah.
of goes to show that we need reform. But yeah, interesting statistics, and I think yeah, looking at how things are going across Europe is always super interesting.
Mm.
But on to our next story. So this was touched upon a little bit last week, but it's kind of continued into this week around the cannabis stock market watch and the surge from the Reddit trading community. So much like last week, cannabis stocks have risen sharply, becoming one of the kind of latest Reddit
Hmm.
trends with millions of amateur investors on there. So shares in Tilray, Canopy Growth, Aurora Cannabis, and Afria have all soared, and this has come out of the discussion on Reddit. I think it's centered around the pending merger between Tilray and Afria, but cannabis companies have obviously also gotten a boost from the Democratic Party's intentions to legalize on a federal level. And the
Hmm.
hashtag MSO gang has been trending on social media platforms as supporters seek to differentiate the US multi state operators from their peers in Canada. And the movement's highlighted a tension between small and large investors, as said by Todd Harrison, chief sorry, cut this out, Ben. Said Todd Harrison, the chief investment officer of CD1 Capital, which is a fund with $50 million invested in US cannabis companies. I mean, this is all
Mm.
pretty big news. I mean, it's kind of continuing, kind of becoming more of a trend in the news. But yeah, like what are your thoughts on this, Lily?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to discuss here, and I think it's super exciting. I'm following this Reddit stock meme thing quite closely, but yeah, I think on the cannabis side of things, that there's a huge amount of just pent up demand to invest in cannabis companies among the retail investors, the small day-to-day, non-professional investors. And until now, there's not really been that many options for them to invest in. Really, I mean, it's mostly the Canadian companies because of obviously federal legalization issues. Only now we're seeing companies listing on the LSE, so I think it's something we're going to be seeing more and more of. But yeah, I think it's just there's a bit of caution to be taken after the last kind of cannabis stock market bubble a few years ago with all the huge high valuations and things. So I think it's quite important that we look at companies sensibly and what they're offering, and because we don't really want cannabis to be like a hype industry at the end of the day. We do kind of want it to be like a stable industry as any other. We
Yeah,
don't want it to be like just like a passing trend. But I think it's great for the companies. I mean, I think I read somewhere that it's double the activity investing in cannabis companies than any previous month. So huge for the companies and for mainstream knowledge of the industry as a whole. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I'm quite the opposite. I feel like I've not been following the stock market whatsoever. I'm like,
Mm,
I really need to get up to speed with this sort of stuff. It's just not my forte whatsoever. But I agree with you. I think this is a great way to kind of continue to normalize the industry. And like you said, I think it's,
mm,
we need to make sure that it doesn't kind of just become a hype and then fade away. We need to kind of keep it not as just a trend, but a normalized
mm.
product. I mean, I guess this
The
kind of
next
links in with the
GameStop,
next
yeah.
story next story we'll be talking about, but just around like the fact that this is really helping to legitimize the business. You know, regular people can invest in these businesses, and it's just becoming a much more legitimate industry. So yeah, I think it's
Mm.
definitely something to continue watching and keeping track of.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So following on with our next and the final story for today, Kanabo has enjoyed a superb first day as a listed company on the London Stock Exchange. So they debuted on the stock exchange this week. Their shares almost quadrupled on their first day. That's an amazing turnout. So Kanabo, they're an Israeli medical cannabis company. They've developed vaporizers that release a metered dose of cannabis, and they're in an extract form rather than a dry herb vaporizer like what's on the market already. So, really interesting proposition for Europe. Yeah, what do you think about this? I think it's a sign that the industry's really ready to take off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is very kind of closely linked with the work we're doing for New Leaf Opportunities,
Mm,
our kind of thought leadership campaign at VoltFast. And yeah, I mean, I've been following this, and this is just I think it's huge. Like obviously, MGC Pharma listed last
mm-hmm.
week. Kanabo is listed this week. I mean, it's just huge. It's taking off, and I think it's really just showing that the UK and Europe in general are ready for the medical cannabis industry, and it's helping to legitimize this industry. I think it's going to help develop controlled and regulated frameworks for medical
Mm,
cannabis. As I think a key issue in this industry has been that I mean the UK has had medical cannabis legal for what like two and a half years now, and
yeah.
like not much has really changed. Like medicine is still quite
Mm,
inaccessible for patients. It's really expensive, and there's just a lack of control around it. You know, if you're prescribing cannabis, it's quite difficult to deliver a metered, regulated dose, and this is
yeah.
exactly what Kanabo is doing with their really cool, innovative vape pod. Which delivers that
Mm,
specific dose, so it, allows doctors to prescribe like 3 milligrams of cannabis in the morning and in the evening. So just I think it helps to kind of legitimize it, gives cannabis a good reputation, and I think puts a bit more confidence in doctors being willing to
mm.
prescribe it. I mean, I've kind of gone off topic with the whole investment stuff, but that's mostly just because
No, for sure.
I'm not a particular investment noob, but I don't really understand it super well. But um, yeah, I think it's really great and really exciting, and like just a super exciting time to be involved in the industry. Really,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts, Lily? Have you got anything else to add?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with all that you said, and I think we were speaking about this at the New Leaf Opportunities webinar, but I do think that it's just the UK is becoming quite a hub for innovation for cannabis. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities, but we're already seeing some of it happening with the Kanabo things. I think we've been quite experimental with our medical cannabis laws, partly because we've had all the restrictions and slow to take off, but it's meant that we've had things like the registries, the Product 2021, we've had interesting private clinic workarounds, so I think we are building quite a sustainable industry, and as you say, it's great to be a part of it and to really see it kicking off, for sure.
Yeah, it's yeah, super exciting, and just I mean just with all good points, we've been doing this for about 2 months, and like every week there's just been big news. Like it's not just us
Yeah.
hyping it up. Like every week there's been consistently big news. So it just shows how much exciting stuff there is to be happening in the industry.
Yeah, you never know what's
But
coming next. Like, you always think it's the biggest story, and then the next week something just
Then
completely
something
blows it
bigger
out of the
happens.
water.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, of course.
yeah. For everyone that's watching, you guys will have to stay tuned for next week because who knows, another big announcement will be coming. But yeah, I mean that's all we've got for this week. That's all of our stories, our 6 stories, and our internal clock is good. Just ending with 30 minutes in total. So yeah, tune in, guys, next week for some more all good points and maybe some all new faces again. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the female takeover. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.